am the man who grabs the sun, riding to Valhalla! Witness me, blood me! Witness!
This video contains spoilers for both Furiosa and Mad Max Fury Road. The central question of the world of Mad Max is, what do people do when under extreme pressure? What would you do if you were so tested?
As the world falls around us, how must we brave its cruelties?
For many in this world, the answer is extreme, relentless brutality, with some forms of that brutality being more effective than others. When Dementis rolls up to the Citadel for the first time, he challenges Immortan Joe's power through a charismatic speech, attempting to get Joe's subjects to revolt against him.
Food and water for everyone as much as you like. We will share the wealth. You will rule with me in the splendor of a new wasteland.
This is no threat to Immortan Joe. On command, any of Joe's subjects will kill and die for him.
Witness me!
He isn't a comrade that promises to share food with them. He's their daddy, and their rightful leader, and the one and only god of the wasteland. This is the natural consequence of the cult that Joe created around himself. There is no machine shop in the Citadel, but rather a
House of Holy Motors,
where men worship the Immortan and devote themselves to his service. He doesn't promise his subjects food and safety, but rather a glorious afterlife contingent on their blind, sacrificial devotion to his will.
I am awaited! I am awaited in Valhalla!
Religious dogma like this is an incredible binding force. As I've covered on this channel before, in his study of 19th century communes, anthropologist Richard Sosis found that religious communes endured longer than secular communes, and that a community's longevity best correlated to the number of costly sacrifices it demanded from its members. The more sacrifice from individuals, the more cohesive the community. Religious myth appeared to be better at motivating members to make such sacrifices than secular reasoning. Sacred doctrine and leaders are less easily questioned, after all. Likewise, seeing someone make a costly sacrifice for their belief system provides powerful motivation for you to see that belief system as credible. As Harvard anthropologist Joseph Henrich has shown through his work on the theory of credibility-enhancing displays, the strongest predictor of an individual's religious belief in the real world is probably having witnessed a caregiver make costly sacrifices in accordance with their religious belief. The primary action of devotion for the cult of Immortan Joe is literally suicide. Wait, can I say that on YouTube without consequences?
Do not, my friends.
Let's just be safe and say, enthusiastically unaliving yourself and others with boomsticks while your buddies watch. There is no greater sacrifice a fascist cult leader can command, and no greater costly signal to fellow believers than that. And given that the war boys do this, believing that it secures them a place in the glorious Valhalla, the cult of Immortan Joe is, according to research in the cognitive science of religion, the perfect recipe for a successful religious extremist group and fascist dictatorship. But, you probably didn't need me to explain why and how this particular system of brutality works. I'm sure it's intuitive to you that a religious cult with a deified strongman leader is capable of incredible cohesion and extreme violence. And when we see this kind of behavior,
Immortan Joe, who will raise us from the ashes of this world,
we know straight away that's what we're looking at. Mad Max, across its many films, games, and comics, always remains an elemental story. Its characters and its stories so base, so archetypal, that they're always familiar. Even when characters look like this, or this, or this. I really like this one. Look at this. Master Blaster is objectively one of the best builds of any Mad Max character. I mean, there is really something just wonderfully elemental, to be sure, about a little guy riding on top of a big guy. I mean, just look at that.
Who run Bartertown?
Master Blaster runs Bartertown.
This franchise has even been said to reiterate traditional stories across differing cultures.
Somehow, it tapped into universal archetypes. For instance, in Japan, he was seen as a samurai. In Scandinavia, some sort of lone Viking. And in particular, the French said, oh, these are Westerns on wheels. And in the way that the American Western, they were allegorical. A very elemental world with very simple rules.
The story of a strongman hero turned deified tyrant ruler is no exception.
He was there before, like the history man. Initially, he was Colonel Joe Moore. And then he gets out into the wasteland, he becomes this deified in some way, or at least uses some sort of religious belief to become what's him. It's often said that yesterday's hero becomes today's tyrant. They become so holdfast, as Joseph Cambell said. They hold on, they love what they've built so much that they become rigid and whatever. I mean, that's a constant pattern in history.
Mad Max creator George Miller points to Joseph Campbell's idea of a universal monomyth to explain why a character like Immortan Joe is so recognizable. Joseph Campbell, of course, cited the elemental nature of stories like this to say, humanity shares just one myth, the hero's journey, the story of a lone man's struggle toward enlightenment and triumph. The way that these men rule is both a good thing and you are helpless to change it.
And you are not going to fix it up. Nobody has ever made it any better. It is never going to be any better. This is it. So take it or leave it. You are not going to correct or improve it.
One way to read this is, the triumph of fascism is inevitable. And to quote someone just as in favor of individual liberty for all as Joseph Cambell,
Resistance is futile.
Here's the problem with this conclusion, though. That's flat out wrong.
Resistance is not futile?
No, Hugh, it's not. And humanity has other elemental stories which suggest as much.
I feel particularly privileged to grow up in Australia, where we have the oldest continuous culture on the planet in the Indigenous Australian narratives, at least 65,000 years old. Yeah. And the more I get to know them, the more remarkable they are. Fury Road was about 5 wives being taken away from the Immortan Joe. And it was only after Fury Road that I remember that one of the base story, one of the founding stories in all the narratives, the so-called songlines of the nomadic indigenous culture, was a story of 7 sisters escaping a malevolent male force. And I thought, wait a minute, this is a continuum.
These stories are so in our bones that you can't...
in our bones. We are hardwired.
Yeah.
Overcoming tyranny is in our DNA. In one of the many versions of the Seven Sisters Dreamtime story of the First Nations people of Australia, the protagonists beat abusive men with digging sticks and successfully escape them. This is the story George Miller just referred to. In another incredibly ancient Dreamtime story, 7 sisters endure excruciating hardship and learn to vanquish selfishness itself and prioritize caring for others. Even in very patriarchal cultures like ancient Greece, we find mythical figures like Theseus and Heracles that defeat tyrants and save people from danger or exploitation, even if those same heroes do go on to exploit and or oppress people themselves.
Your scum, Dementus! Scum!
Of course, there are also recent historical examples of tyranny being defeated, or at least undermined, which have become foundational mythology in their own right. The American Civil War and abolition of slavery, the defeat of fascism in Germany, Italy, and Spain, and, of course, the French Revolution. The story of resistance and liberation, Immortan Joe's wives in revolt, Furiosa heroically defeating a tyrant.
Remember me?
Is equally elemental to the story of men who kill the world. And if we analyze their story in light of the cognitive science of religion, we see that they draw power and drive from the same social technology as Joe. Regardless of how dead the world becomes, the Volvolini believe that creating a green place is possible. The seeds they carry are themselves sacred objects, connecting the women to their highest ideal.
Plant this seed. Protect the green place.
Sacred doctrine? Check. When a Volvolini is captured, they refuse to betray their clan by revealing the location of their home, even if it would save their own life. Later on, when the green place disappears and men gain greater power and resources in the wasteland, the women still refuse to submit to those men even if they could materially benefit from it. Costly sacrifices? Check. They readily give their lives for each other, and with every death in their clan, their collective resolve becomes even stronger. These acts even help create converts out of those once deeply enmeshed in Joe's own cult. Credibility-enhancing displays? Check. Myth and the power it grants are not the exclusive property of tyrants. Humanity's groupish nature and psychological quirks do not only serve abusive cult leaders, they also serve the oppressed. They serve resistance.
The police are the ones attacking innocent, unarmed people.
They serve justice and compassion. They allow the less powerful to triumph over tyranny. Part of Immortan Joe's power is that the people of the wasteland call him immortal. Fascists call their stories supremely archetypal, immortal, thereby insisting themselves to be inevitable. And we often accept that as if it is not a part of the cult propaganda that sustains them. But as Furiosa and her clan showed, fascists die like anyone else. When people hate them, defy them, battle them, kill them, their mortality is proven. If every elemental story reflects the inevitability of its narrative to repeat in history, then we can argue that it is inevitable that people resist tyranny and destroy fascists however they can. If Joe was destined to start a cult, be worshipped as a god, and rule the wasteland through uncompromising brutality, Furiosa and the Volvolini were destined to rip off his face and feed his body to the hungry.
It's Immortan Joe. They want Joe instead!
That being said, I prefer not to see elemental stories as predictors of inevitabilities, but rather as demonstrations of what is possible. Fascism is always a possibility, but it must be established through willful action. It is possible to defy and defeat fascism, but people must choose to bring that possibility to fruition. When the wasteland tests these characters, their actions do speak to human nature, sure, but they reveal even more about the characters as individuals, what choices they specifically make in response. The story then also asks us, when you are tested, what choices do you make? Are you the kind to bow down to a supposedly inevitable tyrant, or one of those who proves the mortality of tyrants? Thanks for watching. I know it looks bleak out there, but as I hope I got across in this video, we are absolutely not without hope. I've been Drew of Genetically Modified Skeptic. A special thanks to my patrons for their constant love and support. If you want to support my work, subscribe and check out the religious studies courses I produce with Dr. Joseph Laycock. They should be attached to the video below. I'm actually going to recommend that you guys maybe send a few bucks over to American Atheists right now. They are doing great work to resist fascism. As always, if you are an apostate in need, there are resources linked in the description to help you find community and mental health support. Remember to be kind to others in the comments, and until next time, stay skeptical.